All right, awesome, man. So I'm probably about halfway through the book. I sort of took pieces from it. It's awesome. It'll be really cool for a lot of my readers to see because everything you talk about is very applicable
Hmm.
to strength and conditioning. But first, I want to sort of talk to you about this is much more than just a book on cooking, which I honestly wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
Your works 4 Hour Work Week was a big inspiration for me. 4 Hour Body blew me away. This is probably my favorite one yet.
Awesome. That
Yeah.
made my
So the first thing that I actually like to talk about is how this is a book on learning, and you use the term meta learning in there. So could you just explain to anybody who's going to listen to this what meta learning
yeah.
is and how you sort of came into learning how to learn?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a lifelong non-cook, so it's very odd that I would write this book. Just got my first print copy. That's what it looks like. So,
Awesome.
and I'll give a little sneak peek for people.
Oh, very cool. Did you have that? Did you have that one book one?
Yeah, so I got Thai kickboxers. I got everything in here. So the concept of meta learning, I can give a little bit of background. So my readers have been asking me for 5 years to write a book on learning because I've written a lot about how I systematically acquire languages and do things like that, which I had failed at when I was younger. And the term meta, just like a meta-analysis, is a study of studies, right? So you look at, let's say, 20 clinical studies, and there's a study that looks at all of them. That's a meta-analysis. Meta-learning is just the skill of acquiring skills, so learning how to learn. And what I found is that I thought the best way to teach my readers how I approach complex or potentially overwhelming subjects, whether that's learning Japanese or Japanese horseback archery or shooting a three-pointer or whatever. It really applies to just about anything. What are the steps? I took the skill that had beaten me many times before, which was cooking. And so in real time, for the first time, my readers get to see me sort of stumble, learn, deconstruct, select, sequence, all of that to learn how to cook as I travel around the world meeting not only the world's best chefs, but some of the world's best learners. So chess prodigies, professional athletes, goes on and on. And what I wanted to do is, with the book, write the best cookbook, ideally, this is my goal anyway, for novices who want to learn how to cook without recipes. So to deliver all of the primary skills and most versatile skills of a 2-year culinary school in about 4 hours of total prep time, which is the domestic section. So these really short, easy meals that pack a lot of sort of technical knowledge in without you really having to try very hard. It's kind of like the wax on, wax off Karate Kid approach.
Yeah, and I'll attest that because when I first started reading the book, the first thing I did was I followed your scrambled egg
Okay,
recipe.
cool.
And the biggest thing for me was, because I'm not a cook at all, so this was very cool for me is just doubling up the yolks to the white
Yeah.
ratio. Incredible. I was blown away. As my girlfriend came home, I had to make it for her right away. It's very cool how easy it made it for me.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's a Trojan horse, right? So I want people who otherwise wouldn't cook to try some of what I'm proposing because they want to learn this meta learning stuff. And then for the people who just want to learn the cooking, I want to sort of Trojan horse in the ability to learn anything. I thought it'd be kind of fun. So that's how it came about. It's the book that my readers have been asking me for 5 years.
That's awesome. And you sort of answered already, but my next question is, you've acquired a lot of skills over the years. Why cooking? Why a book on cooking as opposed to learning a language or archery from a horseback,
I
etc.?
thought that there are a couple of reasons. So the first was that the cooking was something I personally found very, very difficult before writing this book, and I'd been averse to. I mean, I really never ever cooked. The second is I really wanted to use my hands. I had sort of developed this digital malaise where I would like close my laptop every day and it's like, yeah, I got a lot done or I did whatever, but I didn't have anything to show for it. And I felt like I lost this basic humanness. And even lifting weights and so forth, it just wasn't enough for me. I wanted to actually create things. And initially I thought that would take the form of woodworking. I really fantasized about woodworking, but it was too involved. I had to travel, I had to do all this stuff. And so cooking became my laboratory for trying to reclaim my manual literacy. And it's been a life changer, honestly, just using my hands to make something. I never could have imagined that it would have as big of an impact as it did. The third reason is because I think people eat 3 times a day pretty much no matter what. Learning a language is kind of extra. Like learning how to swim if you don't know, it's extra. For most people, they don't need it to survive. And so I thought it would be just an easier entry point for people. And then in the process, of course, of explaining how to do the scrambled eggs, like these various really simple tricks, they would also learn how to approach all these subjects that they might think are even more intimidating, like learning language, for instance. So that's why cooking.
Sure, it's awesome, and I've only tried one of the recipes. I'm excited to try a few more, and I'm going to ask you for your recommendation for a recipe later. But you said in the book that you really learned to cook by following 2 principles,
Yep.
Which I thought were very interesting to hear. Could you explain what those 2 principles are and how you could apply these to learning any skill, such as swimming, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, I'd failed at cooking many times. I tried it, and I bought cookbooks, found them overwhelming, found them illogical, or I couldn't read one huge paragraph as I'm trying to make mayonnaise or whatever. It was really frustrating. And I really only started to make rapid progress when I used these 2 principles. So the first is failure points and avoiding failure points. So identifying why I was quitting, whether it was too much time shopping or too much time on cleanup. Too many pots going at the same time. So at least one thing would always end up undercooked or overcooked or cold or whatever. And then removing all those, just removing them completely. So really striving for early wins and trying to organize it all that way. So that I lead from like the lowest friction, easiest recipes up to the more complex. There are very few cookbooks that have a logical progression like that. Secondly, so my point being, like, I'm not interested in why people buy cookbooks. I'm interested in why they put them down. That's what I made a study of, and polled hundreds of thousands of people to figure out what the patterns were. And the second principle was borrowed from Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett, the world's most successful investor, at least in the last century, certainly, by most accounts, has a concept that he applies called the margin of safety. And it's kind of similar to real estate, where they say you make your money when you buy the property, not when you sell it. So getting, in his world, investment, it means as a value investor buying something that is discounted. So even if you only get a very mediocre return on investment, it's still really good. In the world of cooking, what that meant is I looked through all the possible cooking techniques and recipes and sets of ingredients, and I asked, how badly can someone screw this up and still end up with a really good meal, like still end up happy with the meal? And those are what I chose, which is why, for instance, in the very beginning, we have braising, which is like Oso Bucco. People think it's really complicated. It's the first recipe in the book because I can teach how to make it really easy by removing certain steps. And if you leave it in the oven for an extra half hour because you forget about it, you're fine. It's still awesome. But if you try to do that with frying a fish on the stovetop, forget it. You're going to have shoe leather. So those are the 2 principles. And so I looked at how to teach cooking and how to teach anything from a behavioral standpoint first, not just like, here's a group of 20 chicken recipes, here's a group of 20 steak recipes, because that clearly doesn't work for people. How you apply it to swimming is really easy in the case of swimming. So I only learned to swim a few years ago, which is embarrassing considering I grew up on Long Island, right at But the reason that I quit so many times was when I took swimming lessons, the first thing they would do is put me on a kickboard, and they'd say, okay, like do 5 laps, kick on the board, kick, and just anatomically I'm not designed to swim, and my feet would cut through the water. I wouldn't move. I would be exhausted. I'd be overheated, even in the pool, and I'd quit because I was clearly failing. And the way I got past that was by rethinking all of the biomechanics of swimming through the total immersion method. And that was introduced to me by a few friends who also had not been able to swim for decades. And that method involves almost no kicking. It's like almost zero kicking. It's all about basically optimizing hydrodynamics, as explained in the 4-Hour Body, also in the 4-Hour Chef, so that you can convert this like gliding motion, this punching through motion, into forward glide. And it changed everything. I mean, I went from not being able to do 2 laps to like 20 laps at a time in less than a week. It was amazing. So exact same principle applied to 2 areas that you would think would be completely different. But as it turns out, like learning things quickly has a recipe, and you can apply it to everything that I've encountered so far.
That's awesome. I think what really hit home for me was definitely hearing about those failure points and getting a lot of wins right out of the gate. to sort of, yeah, and sorry, I'm not sure if you just saw the lights just flicker, so I'm not sure if something, yeah, anyone who's listening to this, we were filming this in the midst of Hurricane Sandy, so
Yeah.
it's pretty fun. But no, that's awesome. I want to kind of continue on that for a little bit about getting those wins right out of the gate and continue this learning process. DIS is your acronym that you use for approaching any new skill. And the first letter in DIS stands for deconstruction. I thought this was really cool. Could you sort of just talk on that a little bit? Your sort of process, what DIS is, and how you could apply it to learning a new skill, say, learning a new language or something of the sort.
Yeah, absolutely. So DIS acronyms are really helpful. In this case, it just stands for deconstruction, selection, and sequencing, and that's kind of the bedrock acronym. There's some other things that you can add on to that for bonus points, but if you were applying that to, let's say, learning a language. So learning a language to most people is this really overwhelming, amorphous skill. And they've been told since they were little it takes a lifetime to learn a language. It takes a lifetime to learn a language. It's total nonsense. It's total nonsense. But, I mean, I also gave up on Spanish when I was 14, 15 because I couldn't speak at all, even though I'd studied for years. And I was like, oh, I'm bad at languages. No, I wasn't bad at languages. It's that I didn't have a good system. So, for instance, if you look at any given language, but English, Spanish, let's use Spanish, you can achieve functional fluency with about 1,200 words of vocabulary. And you'll find that even 100 words delivers 50% of all Spanish. So you have this very finite 1,200 words instead of learning a language. All right, so that's one piece of it. Then for grammar, let's say if you're looking, again, to deconstruct and find the minimal Lego blocks, you would identify a few helping verbs. So rather than having to conjugate 1,000 verbs right off the bat, which is what almost every course does, and people will quit, of course, I'd say, all right, you're going to learn to conjugate to want, so I want, you want, etc. To need, to have, maybe 4 or 5, to be, like 4 or 5 verbs. You can do it in an afternoon. Once you have that, then you can unlock all the rest of the verbs without having to change them, right? So you can say, instead of saying, I'm going to the theater or whatever, you just say, I want to go to the theater. I need to go to the theater. And you don't change any of the other verbs. So all of a sudden you've cheated, but it's okay to cheat in this case because you're getting those early wins. And that's how I've approached Spanish, German, a bunch of different languages. Now let's take something. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so this is just sort of approaching it the Pareto Principle.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the selection piece. So you identify what these various Lego blocks are, and then you do the 80-20 analysis, which is in the 4-hour work weeks, in the 4-hour body, it's in the 4-hour chef too. Like all of these books are very unified, and in fact, I sort of intend these 3 books to be used together because I'm a huge Ben Franklin fan. So you have Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise. So Healthy is 4-hour body, Wealthy is 4-hour work week, and Wise is the 4-hour chef. So all the principles are the same. And then let's just say like Japanese, learning Japanese, oh my God, like learning to read and write Japanese. Almost everybody fails. But the way you avoid failing is you realize, okay, to be functionally literate based on the Ministry of Education, and these are all easy things to figure out, and I map it out in the book, like you need roughly 1,900 characters, okay? But that's a lot. What you realize is all of those characters are made of things called radicals, and there are only 214 of those. Seems like a lot, but you can also memorize those. There's a book called Remembering the Kanji. You can learn those radicals again in like a weekend. I could teach you to read Korean in like 45 minutes. It's really, really fun. And once you feel like it's graspable, it's finite, then you go for the gold, and that's half the battle right there. So, but the deconstruction, selection, sequencing, it could also be applied to, let's say, golf or basketball. And I talked about both of those. So Stan Utley is one of the top short game golf instructors out there. Was quoted at one point by saying, a lot of people think their form is wrong. They come to me and they ask me about form, like, how does my form look? How does my form look? He says, that's not the problem. Your form is fine. So in other words, your selection is fine. You've chosen the right pieces, but you're moving them in the wrong order. So it's the sequence that's wrong. And that's oftentimes where you can really have breakthroughs. And you know this, like whether it's with the swing, like kettlebell swing, Turkish get-up, whatever, any type of athletic move, if you get the chain of elements out of order, you're stuck. you're not going to make progress. So
Oh yeah,
testing
absolutely.
that is really important. And same with language, right? So I'm not going to front load weeks and weeks of grammar without getting you to actually interact with a native speaker or to produce something, because it's too boring. It's boring and demoralizing. No one's going to do that.
And you know, my favorite is the actual last S, stakes. I thought you had a very, very funny and unique way for setting stakes and providing motivation. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give a little bit of context first. So stakes I also talk about in the 4-Hour Body, right? Because changing any behavior is very similar.
Yep.
And in the 4-Hour Body, or actually, I think it's in some of my speaking engagements I've done, I've said, look, if you took 100 people in an audience and you split them into 2 groups, you have 50 people randomly assigned to personal trainers. Don't know if they're good, bad, maybe a couple of really, really good ones. So personal trainers. Then you have the other 50 who just have to take an iPhone photo of everything they eat or drink before they eat or drink it.
Mm-hmm.
I would put my money, average, let's say, fat loss on the iPhone group. And so that's awareness, right? Now the stakes also is really, really effective. So that's the awareness. So in my particular case with the 4-Hour Chef, there are a couple of ways you can go about doing it, but I recommend having a consequence to not cooking. Because like if you fail a diet, you don't get fired from your job. There's often not really a real consequence, to eating that bear claw at 1 a.m. or whatever. So you create consequences, and the way you create consequences is you use a service like Stick, so STICKK. .com, where you can take some meaningful amount of money to you, and you can do this with friends too, and you put, let's say, 1% of your pre-tax income. It's that's a decent chunk into Stick, and then that goes into escrow, and then you choose an anti-charity. And so an anti-charity is a charity that you would rather slam your head in a car door than donate to.
Then give them money, yeah.
So it could be, depending on who you are, it could be pro-life, pro-choice. It could be the George W. Bush Presidential Library. It could be whatever, And you choose one that just makes your blood boil, and you will work to not have that donated to that group. So that's a stake. Those are stakes, and that's how you create them. There are other ways to do it. So that's a punishment, and I actually do think that the stick is, boom, the carrot and the stick. The stick,
yeah. As opposed to the carrot.
The stick can be much more effective than the carrot. If you want to play with the carrot, you can do that too. There's sites like dietbet.com where people can contribute to this pool of money, and then people who, let's say, lose 4% or more of their body weight by the end of 4 weeks, 8 weeks, split the pot, right? So you can try both. But I like the stick. I think people respond well to it.
I think that Stick site has just solved all the motivation problems for any of the clients that I've ever had. So I definitely attribute that to the 4-Hour Chef. I'm going to be putting that to good use. So let's actually talk about diet now, because I'm a big fan of the slow carb diet, and a lot of the recipes in the 4-Hour Chef are slow carb. For anybody that's unfamiliar with that, could you just sort of outline the primary principles of the slow carb diet? And then I sort of want to talk about a few specifics.
Yeah, absolutely. So slow carb diet was popularized through 4-Hour Body, and it's been huge. We've had hundreds of thousands of people now try it out, which is cool because we track a lot of it. And even the staff of the show Intervention has lost hundreds of collective pounds by using it, which is fun. But the basic rules are: don't eat white food. There are some exceptions like cauliflower, but just avoiding starches and grains and whatnot. This applies 6 days a week. I'll come back to that. So all the rules apply 6 days a week. 2 is don't drink calories. So you can have iced tea, you can have tea, you can have water, whatever, coffee, but you can't, no juice, no soda, no milk, etc. The third rule would be minimizing fruit intake, which is a bit controversial, but chances are your ancestors didn't have Florida oranges in December, so they got by just fine, and so will you. You can do without fruit for 6 days a week. And then the last, really, or I should say the last sort of strict rule is don't get fancy. So repeat the same few meals over and over again. And some people have an aversion to that. Like, oh my God, that sounds so boring. Until I say, look, what have you had for breakfast for the last week? And it's probably the same thing every single.
Yeah, it's the same thing anyway.
Anyway, you're just choosing a new default meal. And then the last rule is take one day off a week and go totally nuts. So you have one cheat day a week. I recommend Saturday. Some readers call that Fatter Day, or dieters going Wild Day. And you can have whatever you want. I still enjoy that. I have my bear claws, my pizza, all that stuff. And
so two things. One is that eat the same meals every day. Now with the 4-Hour Chef, it's very cool because for that scrambled egg recipe, you really have, 3 or 4 ways to actually sort of spice up your eggs. So you can have the variety there now with the 4-Hour Chef.
Ton of variety. And that's, kind of another one of the Trojan horses in the book is that I don't even have to tell people to go on a diet because they won't realize that they're changing much at all because the food is really good and you'll never ever be hungry. But I would be very surprised if people don't lose 15 to 20 pounds a month in many cases just by making the meals in the book, even though they wouldn't notice at all that there's any constraint.
Okay.
So it's baked in. Yeah, it's automatic.
Yeah, I'm very excited to start digging more into those recipes. The book has actually excited me about cooking, and I can't say that that's really ever been done before.
Yeah,
in my
that's the goal. Awesome. I'm very happy with that.
So, but with that being said, there are some spectacular cheat day recipes in the book. So before we talk about those, tell us a little bit about cheat day and how tactically cheating once we can actually help somebody to accelerate weight loss.
So the first reason that it helps is really psychological. So if you stick to, let's say, a really strict diet, whether it's veganism, paleo, you name it, really, really strict for a few weeks and then quit, you might as well have never started because cumulatively, long term, there's going to be no impact. Or you might even have worse behavior after you quit. So from a behavioral modification standpoint, just having that cheat day, that release valve, is very, very valuable for compliance. Like 58, I think it was 58% of the readers that I polled after tracking a few hundred of them said it was the first diet they were ever able to stick with. And these are people who have now been on slow carb for a year, 2 years. I've been doing it for about 8 years myself. The second reason is that strategically overeating, so spiking your caloric intake, let's say once a week, has a very favorable impact on some of your hormone levels. Thyroid, for instance, like conversion from T4 to T3, which is the more, I suppose, metabolically active form of thyroid hormone. And so, in fact, and I sort of have demonstrated this a few times, you can do some crazy things, like eat 15,000 calories in 20 minutes, which I with the Ben & Jerry's for Monster, which is intended to be shared by like 8.
Which I just saw in the book, by the way, which is pretty remarkable.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
And so I did that on one day, and then the very next day, if that weren't bad enough, the very next day I did the New York City Food Marathon and ate 26.2 dishes in 26 locations, in 24 hours, which had to have been like 15,000 calories. Again, it was just disgusting. I mean, awesome, but really excessive. And then the day after that, I'd measured my body fat before all of that, and I measured my body fat after it all, and it was lower body fat. And that was with an ultrasound analyzer. I mean, millimeters of thickness of body fat, subcutaneous, so very accurate. And you can pull that kind of stuff off. It just requires some biochemical tricks, and the cheat day allows you to get away with murder. Really, I mean, you can. There are no limitations at all. But you can't let it bleed. You can't do it, day on, day off.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree, and I'm living proof of it. I typically cheat once every 2 weeks, sometimes once every week. What are your thoughts on red wine, Tim? We're allowed to have that just about every night?
I like red wine. I'm a big fan. So I enjoy my 1 to 2 glasses. Once you get up to like 3, 4, you can start putting a burden on your liver and whatnot. But 1 to 2 glasses, no issue whatsoever. For older women, let's say women who are menopausal or postmenopausal, because red wine can have an effect on estrone and certain other hormones in those women, it can lead to stalled fat loss. So if you're an older woman, menopausal or postmenopausal, and you end up stalling out on the slow carb diet or whatever, then you might want to dial back on the red wine and see if that makes a difference. Sometimes women stall, sometimes they don't. But in general, I like my red wine. So I've had no issues, and nor have thousands of readers with having 1 or 2 glasses a night. Very
cool. So 1 to 2 glasses a night is totally cool.
Yeah, totally.
Like that. I love it. Awesome. So a couple more questions I have for you. You are in RKC 1 or 2, Tim? Are
Two,
you are
two,
you
yeah.
level 2?
RKC two.
You're level 2? How have you used sort of your system for learning a new skill? How did you use that when actually preparing for the RKC to develop the strength that you had to develop? Because anybody who is an RKC or has heard of RKC will know that you have to be strong in order to obtain that certification.
Yeah, you do need to be pretty decently strong. I mean, certainly not compared to my powerlifting buddies at the top of the game, but compared to most people, you need to be pretty strong. I mean, you're going to be doing a one-arm kettlebell clean and press with half your body weight, or maybe a little bit more. Then you have to do the chin with the 53-pound kettlebell at the feet, and so on and so forth. So it's definitely a challenging course. What I did that was different is I came to the conclusion, for this and for many other things, also for marathon training, for instance, you don't actually have to train at high volume to perform at high volume. And that's controversial, but I've implemented it myself, certainly in many cases. So for the RKC2, even though I knew I would be doing thousands of swings, I actually focused on technical refinement so that my movements would be as calorically and ergonomically efficient as possible. So focusing on technique first. Secondly, I really trained, I would say, 3 times a week for, it's going to sound ridiculous, but like 30 minutes max, 3 to 4 times a week. And modeled my training after Barry Ross's training for sprinters, for world-class sprinters, which was in the 4-hour body as the effortless superhuman. So doing max sets, 2 to 3 reps, 5 minutes of rest, and doing 2 to 3 sets of that.
And was this all on the deadlift or a couple various
deadlifts, and then focused on the primary moves for the RKC itself. So got very specific, worked on cleans, worked on a couple of movements that I was less familiar with. So clean and jerk type movements, worked with more double kettlebells as opposed to singles, and then focused on just biochemically and from a macronutrient standpoint, really being on my game. So that meant that just like wrestling, I would weigh in. I had to hit my weights because that determines the weights that you use for kettlebells. I didn't cut very much because we did it the morning of, but then ensured that when I rehydrated, I was using all the usual suspects, but creatine, glutamine, beta-alanine I found very helpful, which is used by a lot of sprint cyclists. And then just focused on really, really intense recovery protocols, because succeeding in RKC2 or RKC1 for that matter, it's, I guess, typically 2 days, might even be 3 days in some cases, and you are going to be destroyed after the first day. I mean, most people do not do hundreds or thousands of swings, especially if it's in the beating sun, as it often is for these types of.
Now, what year did you do yours, Tim?
I did RKC1 a few years ago. It was for the 4-hour body, or before the 4-hour body, so it must have been latest 2009. And RKC2, I guess I probably did a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And the recovery, so icing, contrast therapy, which these Germans used, so like hot and cold contrast therapies to accelerate recovery. Ensuring very high protein intake, mostly isolates, whey protein isolate, and so forth. Certainly breaking my dietary rules during that period of time, so having a higher consumption of quickly digested carbohydrates. One of the things that a lot of RKC people neglect is potassium. So they'll consume a lot of water during training, so they're outside. And most people don't, again, they don't do thousands of swings, let alone in the sun where you're getting all sweaty and nasty. And so they'll drink a lot of water and they'll throw off their electrolyte balance and they'll end up getting quad cramps and things like that. So 99 milligram potassium tablets that you take every few hours is really important. So just having all of that really dialed in allowed me to use the minimum effective dose for training. So my volume was actually very, very low, but it was effective. The biggest challenge was the pull-up.
Yeah, was it for you? Now, is that just a personal thing for you, or just did you notice that that was the biggest challenge for
I have
people in
a
general?
couple of injuries, so my lower traps and a few other things just don't activate very well. Kind of wonky in my
Hmm.
rib cage. I have some mobility issues in my rib cage, so I'm just poorly designed for pull-ups. And then you have the RKC pull-up, which is just 100
Yeah.
harder. I mean,
From
'cause you're not doing like like that. You're coming up and touching the bar here, and then coming out and going back down. I mean, you take guys who do 20 sloppy pull-ups, they can't do one proper military pull-up by RKC standards. It's really tough. So then you add on 53 pounds, especially if you're at the lighter body weights. That's a lot of weight.
Yeah, there you go. You mentioned whey protein. I completely forgot. And minimum effective dose, both of them perfectly. Number one tip for somebody who wants to cut weight quickly. You said the minimum effective dose for that is to actually the simplest little trick is to just take what is it, 30 grams of whey protein within 30 minutes of waking up.
Oh, for fat loss.
Yeah, for fat
Yeah,
loss. Yep.
absolutely. It's That's what I did with my dad, and it comes down to not trying to do too much at once, and this applies to everything: language, cooking, whatever. Rig the game in the beginning so you can win, right? So if you never go to the gym, you hate going to the gym, don't set your New Year's resolution at an hour in the gym each time you go. Go there and spend five
Yeah.
minutes and leave. Set it at 5 minutes so you can actually check off a win each time. And the same goes for people who have a lot of weight to lose or even less weight to lose. If they're not exercising, diet is going to be 95+% of fat loss. And I'm not going to have them overhaul their entire diet at once. I'll do one baby step at a time, and I'll say, all right, I want you to consume 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up. That's it. You don't have to change anything. You can eat the same breakfast if you want, whatever, I don't care. But you need to get 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up. For all I care, it could be a myoplex. Not ideal with all the other stuff in it, but you have to go for
Yeah.
it. And my dad went from 5 or so pounds of average fat loss per month to 18.75 pounds of average fat loss after 4 weeks of doing that. It was the only change. So that is a very simple trick.
Hmm. I mean, that's very cool to see how you've applied sort of the Pareto principle to all of these sort of different, skills from learning a language to fat loss to strength training to cooking to swimming.
Yeah, and what's nice is that you're not learning a different set of principles, techniques for all these different things. It's like you have four or five, you have a recipe with 4 or 5 steps, and you just apply it when you're looking at anything new that you want to learn. And for me, it makes me more curious. Because a lot of people assume they can only become world class in 1 or 2 things in their entire lives. And my standpoint is, if you learn how to look at it properly, you can do that with 1 or 2 things per year, maybe more.
Mhm.
And that really changes how you look at your life and how you look at your options and everything.
Mhm. One thing you said in the 4 Hour Chef that really stuck out to me as well was that the 1% succeed despite how they train, not because of it, and you're better off studying. What did you say? The 5%, the top 5%, and learning from them.
Yeah, it's so the best performer is not always the best teacher, and it's
Yeah.
easy to confuse. It's easy to get confused there. So the people who have made the most progress in the shortest period of time from a baseline of 0 are the people you want to talk to. So the example I like is the Arthur Jones anecdote. The founder of Nautilus, famous for his 1 set to failure training, but he said, if you want to learn how to train, go up to the biggest 350-pound bodybuilder you can find at your gym, ask him what to do, and then do the opposite. Precisely because, like you said, many of the top performers do well despite how they train, despite how they eat. I mean, I know a lot of amazing NFL players, 5% body fat, breakfast McDonald's, lunch Wendy's, dinner Burger King. They eat crap. It's total crap, and their genetics and a lot of other factors make up for it. So you wouldn't want to emulate that diet. So looking for people with very mediocre raw materials, or say average raw materials genetics, who've made a lot of progress in a short period of time, those are the people that you want to emulate. And the detective work to find those people is not too tough. You can figure it out.
Mm-hmm. So then let's put this in a little bit of context. Me, who does no cooking at all, and I'll actually film this. I'll put this on YouTube. I want to cook something for my girlfriend from the 4-Hour Chef. What would be, aside from the scrambled eggs, which I've tried already, what would you recommend for me to have a go at?
Does she have any dietary restrictions?
None.
Okay.
None.
I would do the Oso Bucco, the first recipe, the very first one. It's totally hands off, and you can have a glass of wine as you're cooking it with your girlfriend. Give her a glass of wine too. It's always a good start. And it literally takes. I can explain it. I mean, it's so easy, and people think it's.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's so easy. This is all it is. I mean, and I have cooked this meal. I've had friends come over who dine at fine restaurants who've said, "Oh my God, this is so good. You should start the Tim Ferriss restaurant." And then I explain how it's made. They laugh their asses off. It's so funny. So here it is. Ready? And there are a few variations. I'll just give this simple one. And this is not using veal. Sure. This is using lamb shanks. So you get a couple lamb shanks, and I encourage people to cook more than they need so they have leftovers, because it's even better sometimes it's leftovers. So you get like 4 lamb shanks, you put it in a Dutch oven, which is just, one of the, you can get it for $20. It's a pot, a heavy cast iron pot typically. Put in a bunch of, 14 ounces of crushed tomatoes, so good tomatoes, just a can, 14 ounces a can. So lamb shanks, can, you break up a bunch of small carrots, put those in. Don't even need to cut them, just snap them in half. Then you take 3/4 of a bottle of white wine, pour that in, put in a bunch of pepper, and you don't need to get more specific than that. It's not going to hurt you if you have more pepper. So
So you have a little bit of margin of error there.
Matter, like 8 to 12, grinds of pepper. Yeah. Like a 3-finger pinch of salt and a little glug of olive oil, and then you close it. You put it in the oven at 350 for 2.5 hours, and you're done. That's it. It takes, it's so easy, and it will blow your mind how good it is. It's just incredible. So that's the type of meal that I want people to cook, and I think it'll really blow people's minds when they realize how easy it. Not all of cooking is easy. There are some really difficult aspects, but you don't have to learn them. Focus on the simple stuff that gives you a huge return on investment early on, and then if you want to tackle the tough stuff later, I give some guidance on those as well. But you never to cook thousands of dishes and to have people think that you have been cooking for a decade just needs about a week and 100 pages and minimal time. 5 to 10 minutes of prep per dish, and you're set. It's really, really straightforward.
That's and that's perfect for somebody like me. And what I'm going to do as soon as this hurricane blows over is I'm going to go out. I'm going to get all that. I'll film it and I'll put it on my blog so everyone can sort of see just how accessible this really is. I would love you to
do that. I don't think I'm missing anything. It wouldn't. What I explained would work just fine. But maybe there's some detail that I've neglected. Some low on caffeine. Who knows? But that's why you write the book, so you don't have to remember all of it.
So speaking of the book, 4-Hour Chef. I would say I'm about 75% done with it. It's by far my favorite book that you've written so far, and that says a lot because I've read all of your works. I'm an avid reader of your blog. So if you've never read 4-Hour Workweek, you need to read that. If you've never read 4-Hour Body, you absolutely need to read that too. 4-Hour Chef is due out on the 20th, correct, Tim?
November 20th, and it's through Amazon Publishing, which is exciting. So it's the first major acquisition of Amazon Publishing. So that's probably the best place to find it. It's about 40% off last time I checked. So it's definitely it's a beautiful book. Honestly, part of the reason I also wanted to write this is I wanted to create something physical, again, that was really gorgeous. So this is it. We've got about 1,500 photos. It's got maybe a couple hundred illustrations. It's really fun. I mean, it's a good gift book also for the holidays.
Yeah, it truly is a gorgeous book. The picture, it's very readable. The pictures are fantastic, and I love the approach that you used. It is very much an awesome cookbook. But for me, what's very appealing is how you sprinkled in those elements of how to learn, of learning how to learn, which is very, very cool. It's something that I've been into for a while, but I think that you make it very approachable and very non-intimidating, if that's even
I know, I
such a
appreciate
word.
it.
So they can get their copy. Can they pre-order it through Amazon Prime? Not Amazon Prime, just
Yeah,
Amazon.
they can certainly pre-order order it. It's going to be a really fun one. Comes in a special box. But if people want to have any interest in buying copies for let's say loved ones, friends, whatever, as gifts, because it is the season, right? I'm
Hmm.
offering a dedicated exclusive Q&A with me live for people who buy 3 copies. So if you buy 3 copies of the book, the print edition, okay, so make sure it's the print edition, then just send that Amazon receipt to 3 books, number 3 books, all spelled out, at 4hourchef.com. So the number 4, and then HOURCHEF.com. So 3 books at 4hourchef.com. Just send the Amazon receipt for 3 books, and then you'll get an invite to a dedicated Q&A session with me after launch week, where you can ask me anything you want. 4-Hour Chef, anything, doesn't matter. So for people who are interested, that's available also.
That's awesome. I'm actually just going to take you up on that because this has been an incredible amount of information that you provided here. But I mean, that's awesome, man. You're going to let people pick your brain. That's
Oh
that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I'll grab a bottle of wine. You can go nuts. You can ask me anything.
Very cool. Anything else you want to add at all, Tim? I mean, I could go all night, but you provided a ton of information. Is there anything else that you really want to say about the 4-Hour Chef that you think everybody should know?
Yeah, I'll say one more thing, which I think just applies in general too, and this is something that's become really clear to me. I mean, the older I get, and that is, you have a limited amount of time on this planet, and I think the best way to sharpen the saw and get double, triple the value out of your life is to increase your ability to learn. So if you double, triple your learning speed, your ability to tackle all of these various things, become world class at 1 or 2 per year, I mean, it changes everything, and it's a pretty nominal investment of time. So I would encourage people, at the very least, to check out 4hourchef.com and see some of the sample chapters and whatnot. But this is a 2-year project, and I had a big team on it. It's my proudest. I'm certainly proudest of this book, of all the books I've written so far. So I hope people enjoy it.
I'm sure they will.
Cool.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.